Version 1.8 Realm of Illusion of Snowbreak is here, and with every new version comes a tier list and team building guide, and it's here. So let's get right into it. First of all, for the tier list, there are some pretty big changes this time. One of the biggest changes is Cherno. Cherno is now the top DPS in the tier list for investment. Again, disclaimer, it's an investment tier list, not a DPS comparison, and support is highly valued. So Kaguya is at the top because she can basically be in every team for every single DPS in the meta. So yes, Cherno is now the top DPS. She took over Yao because they are both tied for being the best for 6 bosses. Both are best for 6 bosses in Neural right now, so you can see it in the team building guide how many bosses they are the best for. But in terms of all of the content, Cherno Enigma is way better than Yao in terms of mobbing and every other event mode that exists. Yao pretty much only outclasses her in terms of burst DPS with her ultimate if you have Tess. And next we have Mauxir Shadoka. 5-star Mauxir is now SSS Plus because now I've realized that she was only in SSS since I thought she was niche, right? I thought she was a ballistic DPS support, but after looking at the whole meta, the reality is that she's a top tier support for skill-based DPS as well, because her Kebeche is incredibly useful and Alloy Truth is a broken weapon. It's really a broken weapon that everyone needs tier 2 of. That's why I have 2 tier 2 Alloy Truths on my account. And then the next change is that Coronet has fallen off in the meta. She's no longer in the meta, but she's still a decent budget investment for beginners who need a DPS right when they've started the game. So she fell off, but she's still not terrible. She's still in SSS because she's still a very good ballistic DPS. And Siris was one of the reasons for this. So 5-star Siris is in SSS after her evaluation and her recent buffs. And that's because she's an ultimate skill DPS who has both high burst damage and very good survivability. Her mobbing is also decent, so she is quite better than Coronet, but she doesn't really match up to the DPS of Cherno, Yao or Katya, you know? And she's only really slightly below Chensheng in terms of DPS and versatility, and that's because of having to build resilience stacks in her rotation, which might not be very smooth for some fights and event modes. But yes, she's a decent character to pull. You can look at my guide for Siris to see an in-detail evaluation and character builds. Then next we have 4-star Fenny and Eatchel move to the top tier of S tier, and that's because it was time to better reflect the meta, and this really is a way better reflection of the current meta than it was before. Fenny is pretty much the top choice for 4-star characters for DPS, and Eatchel is a pretty decent support who's really around like rank 4 or rank 5 for support priority, which is not bad, but not great either. So she is at the top tier of S tier. But yeah, that's another change. And then another big change is that all the ranks, all the tiers after A got merged into one F rank, because Nita, Enya and Haru are pretty garbage for beginners and they don't deserve any investment right now. I was hoping that they would get some buffs over time since launch, but they've pretty much been in the same place since launch, for a while, and I don't think they're gonna get any buffs. They're just gonna get new versions like Nita and Haru got, Enya and Haru got, and Nita's 5-star version probably gonna be up in SSS or SSS plus tier. So yeah, that's the new tier list for V1.8. Now let's get into the team building guide. Big changes to the team building guide. Huge contributions from the community for this. Massive shout out to everyone who's contributed to this team building guide. So first things first, I need to make some things clear. There is a search function that you can use in team building guides. So suppose the current boss for neural is Pi, right? So I can search Pi or Purified, and we've got Purified right here, Pi Purified. Or if it's Joseph, I can search Joe, and I immediately get the recommended GPS and also the ranking and strategy for them. If I don't have the recommended GPS, all of these have been updated. Some more changes to the bosses and DPS guide are that now there are links to Wix guides for each of the bosses, which are really in-depth explanations of what you do for each of those bosses, both for speedrunning and for casual players. And there are some new traits that are added like teleportation and gimmick phases, which will be very relevant in the future as well. But right now this is relevant for Mauxir's Caboche. I added a broken shield icon to show the resistances, a vulnerability, and a shield icon for invulnerability resistance. So those are the changes for the bosses. A bunch of stuff has been updated for the rankings as well, with the addition of Siris and Pi. So you can check this out. Essentially, as I've said before, Pi Purified is a boss that is designed so that 5-star Siris would be the best DPS for her. And that's just what the meta is right now. And support, the support table. The support table is now updated as well. All of these links, all of them, they link directly to the build. So you directly go to whichever build you need. So if I need to go to the Resistance Shred support build of 4-star Acacia, I just click on it and instantly I'm there. So that's a new addition, super helpful for many beginners. And all of these have been updated to reflect the meta right now. But a massive change that is coming is that I've clarified the definition of meta, and now there is a meta DPS support guide with a brand new format. So you've got your main DPS, you've got your utility here, and you've got your priorities from 1 to 6, right? And for your main DPS, you only have meta DPS in this table. So what does it mean for a DPS character to be in the meta? You have to be included in the recommended column for all the bosses in Neuro. So if you're not in the recommended column, you're not in the meta. That's how Fenny Coronet fell off the meta, because she's no longer recommended for any of the bosses in Neural as the best DPS character in Snowbreak. And so let's look at the second support guide in detail and how it works. So for 5-star Cherno, you want skill damage buff from 5-star Enya and you energy recovery from 5-star Tess. That's gonna be the best thing you can come up with. And then your next choices are 5-star Mauxir for Chaos Shred, a Resistance Shred. If you don't have Mauxir, you go for Marian. If you don't have Marian, you go for Acacia. Yada yada yada. So they're all ranked in terms of priority, even for the utilities in this guide. And this table really helps you understand what to do when you don't have the top picks, right? So you can use the support table as well, but this is really the one you want to use when you are looking for building a meta team. So the top team is Cherno Enya Tess for Cherno, right? Then for Yao you have ballistic damage buff, so you have Mauxir. If you don't have Mauxir, then you take any of these, and all of those would be sources of ballistic damage buff from Amarna. Then you have U Energy Recovery from 5-star Test and 4-star Akasha Devos. You have Resistance Shred from 5-star Akasha and 4-star Visha, and damage buff from 4-star Akasha. For Katya, you have ballistic damage buff, Resistance Shred as your top choices, so you'll mostly be using Mauxir and 5-star Akasha. But essentially, you kind of get what the point of this table is, right? Like for each main DPS, you have the top choices based on the utility they provide. And if you don't have the top choice in that utility, you look for the next best choice in that utility. But that might still not be the best choice, and you might want to check the support table to make sure, for example for Chen Xing, that 4-star Chen Xing is the really next best choice. The next best choice, if you don't have Enya, is to have 5-star Mauxir and 5-star Akasha, because they have separate utilities. So yes, that is how this one works, and the same thing for links works in here as well. Takes you straight to the build. It's beautiful. So we've got that going right now for this table, and then in classification section I've added Siris. So I got a bunch of questions about what is burst, what is sustain. You can think of it as just the difference between discrete versus continuous, and burst is essentially doing a lot of damage in a short burst window. So a short DPS window, you do a lot of damage. Sustain is doing a constant amount of high damage over time. And in terms of Siris, she is a burst DPS because she relies on her ultimate skill, which she can pop off at any moment during a burst window. So she's a burst thermal DPS who relies on her ultimate skill. And in terms of support, she is under shield because her support skill does give shield, even though it's not very relevant now, it could be in the future. And a new addition is Tess as a part breaker support because she is very good as a addition to any strategy that requires part breaking, for example Yerush Pillars, right? So we've got that in this chart now. And that's pretty much the end of team building guide. There's a lot of new stuff in it. Hopefully you all find it useful. And thanks to Alex, Crabble, Skateo, and Hopper for contributing more to the guide. I'm very grateful to everyone who has contributed as always. And we've got new additions every week, every patch. More people will be invited to contribute as well to the community based on how active they are in the community and how much they contribute. And if you're interested, you can always DM me on Discord. But we have another addition in the beginner's guide, which is the banner guide. And that's the last thing I wanted to touch upon because it's a new thing. It's a really good thing. I'm really glad that season added the 100% pity banner. A lot of gacha games really hesitate to add something like this, but if you look at the deep analysis, it really doesn't matter that much. And in my opinion, you only pull on the 50% banner if you either want standard characters like Yao, Fenny, and Life, and most new players should be pulling on 50-50 to get those characters if they don't have them, or standard weapons, which is not really a huge incentive really. Standard weapons are not that great, you usually want to go for limited weapons, but you can also pull on the 50% banner if you have better build or if you're feeling lucky, of course. So that's my opinion, but you can go read all of these really in-depth analyses of the banner guides and pick and choose which banner to pull on based on that. So that's it for this video. I hope you found this useful and have a nice day.